Now that we understand what a function is and we've seen one in Azure, let's talk a little bit about durable functions. So one of the key points with Azure Function is that they run when needed, they process the data, and then are shut down. This is very helpful for simple applications, but it's terrible for maintaining state. One way to get around this is by utilizing durable functions, because they become stateful. How this works is you are essentially stringing multiple functions together to pass information necessary between each one. By leveraging the bindings and triggers, we can pass the necessary information from one function to the next, so they can process the data as defined within the function and then hand it off to the next one. With this in mind, there's a couple different function types that we need to be aware of. Activity functions are essentially the individual functions that process the request. In our previous example or our demonstration, we created what is essentially an activity function. It takes data in, does its process, and outputs that data. Alternatively, there are entity functions, and that read and update the state throughout the process. These are defined by a trigger type of entity function. So now that we understand a little bit about how durable function works, let's look at some of the patterns that are available. There are a number of patterns available depending on how your function needs to run. I wanted to highlight a couple of examples here to help explain the concept. The first one is called chaining, and essentially you have the first function, f1, that runs, which in turn passes data to function 2, function 3, so on and so forth. So it's a very logical and linear approach to it. Another option is the fan in, fan out. So you would have the first function take some data and output it to a queue of some sort. Then the various functions in F2 would sit there and check that queue. Is there new data? Grab it, process it, and output it. It would then go back and check, is there still new data in that queue? If so, grab it, process, and output it. And this would repeat until there is no new data in that queue. And then finally, the F3 function would sit there. It would grab the data that was outputted by the F2, handle it accordingly, and then output or do whatever is needed. Hope this helps explain durable functions and functions in general. Look forward to talking with you shortly as we jump into Cosmos DB.